So I wasn't going to be making this video initially. I was just sitting on my couch watching Raw from 1999, just random episodes during the quarantine period at the moment to try and fill in some time. And really, it brought to life everything I've been saying about WWE and everything that people with a brain in this community have to say, that the shows they put on now on Raw, SmackDown, and just WWE in general, there's no just substance behind them. There's no greater picture. There's no grand story. There's no flow. There's no like when you turn on a show and you see the first 15 minutes, you think, God, I have to see what happens in the rest of this show. There's none of that. And as I said, it was really brought to life when I'm watching these Attitude Era WWF RAW War shows from 1999. Watching the one before WrestleMania 15, the two after, watching a Raw show before Fully Loaded 99, the one after. I'm watching these Raws, I'm thinking to myself, this company nowadays is polar opposite of where they were 21 years ago. It's not even, it's just light and day. Because I look at this company in 1999, they had their act together completely. They had storylines written out for months. Okay, they'd fine-tuned what they were doing to a point where, near enough, there were no logic gaps. Everything made sense. Everything was good. It put over all the talent. Okay, it was what wrestling should have been. Now, granted, I will say this. One, obviously, the Raw shows are 2 hours here. They're not 3 hours like the ones you see nowadays. And also, the other thing is that the actual star power, okay, they actually have stars. But then again, if WWE nowadays actually went through with making stars, and by making stars, I mean using creativity, giving us storylines, angles, stables, okay? Doing stuff like that. Doing stuff like that creatively makes stars. Because when you have a big heel stable, and then a couple of baby faces, specifically one or two, dethrone or conquer the heels, it's a big babyface moment. When you have heels who are cool and just destroy the face, it actually feels legit. When you have these storylines going on throughout the show, for example, I'll just think of one here. So I think this was April 5th, 99, I think. Might have been March 29th. I forget which show, but there was the one where Stephanie McMahon got kidnapped by the Ministry and The Undertaker and all those guys, like The Brood, The Undertaker, Paul Bearer wearing sunglasses, who else? Viscera. So you got, Undertaker and all these guys kidnap Stephanie McMahon at the beginning of the show. So we get 3 backstage segments after, a backstage segment after each in-ring segment. So for example, we'll get, I don't know, Val Venus versus Test or something. So some random little short match for a couple of minutes, further a mid-card, undercard storyline, and then we'll cut back to Vince McMahon backstage on the phone desperately calling to see where Stephanie is. Stuff like that. It keeps the viewer invested throughout the show. It's creative. It's something for the viewer to invest themselves in. And we haven't had any of that on Raw in, I don't even know how long. Ever since the PG era started, they've given up on doing that kind of stuff altogether. Any of this, intrigue and mystery throughout the night, these one-night storylines that add up in the grander picture to a pay-per-view, and then the bigger picture to building stars, that's all gone now. This company can't book week to week, let alone month to month, okay? Because it's just these storylines. As I said, the Stephanie McMahon kidnapping thing. Obviously, that one on that episode that I watched led to Ken Shamrock being recruited by Vince. Shamrock gets bloodied in a match versus I forget who, and then Shamrock goes and finds Stephanie, who has these blue imprint drawings on her face, and then she's in the boiler room, and Shamrock finds her, and it's this great backstage moment during the show. Then Stephanie, in another segment, gets returned to Vince, and Vince is crying with emotion. But meanwhile, throughout that same episode, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the champion, had an opening segment where he's demanding that his Smoking Skull Championship belt gets returned to him. So you've got this other storyline throughout the night. You've got multiple night-long storylines where Stone Cold's demanding his belt back. So we keep seeing Stone Cold throughout the show, sitting in his locker room, looking at his watch, because you're building up to the main event. Will he get his belt back? What's going to happen? Will Stephanie McMahon get returned to Vince? Is Vince gonna? What's Vince gonna do? What's the Ministry gonna do? How's the corporation gonna respond? How's Austin gonna respond if he doesn't get his belt back? And then you have other little storylines throughout the show as well. So you have 1 to 4 different night long angles, and it's great wrestling. It's captivating. Now, granted, 1999 hardly produced great matches. Okay, 1999 and 98, not so much 2000, because 2000 had some great matches in there, but especially 98 and 99, it wasn't about the in-ring action. Okay, it was very much like 2 to 5 minute match in the ring to further some mid-card storyline, and then you cut backstage and something's happening. And that's the way I love my wrestling. Okay, that's the way the mainstream and pop culture embraced pro wrestling. These captivating night-long storylines, and they're captivating because the people in them were stars. When Stone Cold was threatening Vince that if you don't give the Smoking Skull Championship belt back by 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., that he's gonna, take out Vince McMahon, that's a captivating storyline. Does Vince get beaten up by Austin, or does he get his belt back and all's good? Does Austin get a Smoking Skull belt? Like, all these little questions. And then you've got all these other storylines, like every storyline feels like has importance. That's the other thing. Nowadays on Raw, you see a random match, you see Asuka versus Liv Morgan to open Raw, and that's not leading to anything. What's Asuka versus Liv Morgan going to do in the long run? You see Ricochet and Cedric Alexander versus Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. Why? What's that building towards? You see 45 minutes worth of Street Profits and Bianca Belair versus Zelina Vega, Austin Theory, and Angel Garza in random combinations. And I think to myself, we'd never see anything like this in the Attitude Era. In the Attitude Era, this would be a 5-minute little 6-person tag they do, and then you go backstage and see Triple H having a confrontation with Big Boss Man over where Ryan Shamrock is. I don't know. Like, you get my point. There'd actually be like purpose between these matches. But nowadays, it's just matches for the sake of matches. None of them mean anything. When Apollo Crews is a 27-minute match with Aleister Black, why are we supposed to care? And this is the thing. If you want to do a 27-minute match between Black and Crews, go right ahead. But feel free to have a story. Have Apollo Crews calling out Aleister Black backstage. Have Aleister Black attack Crews before the match. Have Crews cut a promo in the ring about how Aleister Black's trying to end his career and try to finish him off, and he wants to get his career going. Have Aleister Black, show up behind him and attack him. Just do some stuff. Do something. Ideally, you think of creative storylines, and you don't have to have 27-minute matches between jobbers. I'm not saying Aleister Black's a jobber, but you get my point. So, this is the whole thing with this video. Talking about WWF RAW in 1999 versus Monday Night Raw in 2020. Okay, these shows are light years apart. And as I said in the beginning of the video, the things you need to see in a wrestling show, and realistically a show in general, is a reason to care. Like, out of the opening segment and the first 15 minutes of the show, you need to know what you're going to see for the rest of the night. Is it going to be Vince McMahon trying to get Stephanie back from The Undertaker and the Ministry? Is it Stone Cold Steve Austin desperate to see or not desperate, but he's sitting there checking his watch to see if Vince will return the Smoking Skull belt? Is it, I was watching one where you had, what's his name, Steve Blackman, hit Ken Shamrock with his car, and in one segment, and then we got another backstage segment with Ken Shamrock literally punching, medical security because he didn't want help, and then another segment where Ken Shamrock, ambushed not Big Boss Man, Steve Blackman back. That's 3 backstage segments for an undercard, mid-card rivalry that not many people care about. But because they give you a story, they give you something cool, something interesting, something like, oh my god, Steve Blackman tried to murder Ken Shamrock. I need to say, what's Shamrock going to do? He's the most dangerous man in the world. Is he going to kill him? What's happened here? It's just stuff like that. You need questions. You need a reason. You need a why. That's the problem with WWE nowadays. What's their why? Do they have one? Most of the time they don't. And we saw that clear as day on the April 6th Monday Night Raw show, the Raw after Mania. It's supposed to be where storylines take off, where new feuds begin. And what do we see? We see a meaningless Asuka versus Liv Morgan match. We see Bianca Belair and the Street Profits versus Zelina Vega, Austin Theory, and Angel Garza. We see, Apollo Crews versus Aleister Black for 27 minutes. We see Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch versus Ricochet and Cedric Alexander. We see Nia Jax versus Deonna Purrazzo. What's his name? Humberto Carrillo versus Brendan Vink. Rollins versus some guy they found literally in aisle 4 of Walmart. And then the main event was Drew McIntyre versus The Big Show in the main event of WrestleMania. You've got to be kidding. And there wasn't one backstage segment on Raw to make these things feel special. It was just match after match after match. No creativity. So I'm coming out of watching that Raw show, and then the next day I spend watching Raw shows from when Raw was at its best. When you have Vince McMahon in like 8 different backstage segments throughout the night, one in the ring, like you have all these different elements, these big stables, the corporation, the Ministry of Darkness, the corporate ministry. You have the Union, you have DX, you have The Rock just roaming around being charismatic. Stone Cold's the one everyone loves. You got Kane and X-Pac being a tag team. You got the big Valboski having storylines with Godfather where they're both pimps. Like, you have all this stuff on the show crammed into 2 hours of action-packed, must-see drama. And then you get nowadays 27-minute Apollo Crews versus Aleister Black matches. Nia Jax squashing people. You get 45 minutes of Bianca Belair and the Street Profits when that match could have been literally 5 minutes. Like, you see when you go back to watch these Raw shows nowadays just how bad they are. And to the creans on social media who say, but at least they're putting on a show, man. It's like watching these Raw shows in the Attitude Era, all these creans on social media should go back and do that. It makes you really, it puts into perspective just how bad and boring everything in WWE today is. Everything's dull, everything's through the motions, everything's drab, boring, no reason to care. It's just a show for the sake of putting on a show. For the sake of them, fulfilling their TV rights deal of putting on a product every week. That's all it is. Okay, they don't care about the product. Vince stopped caring in 2008. Okay, he really stopped caring when WCW got bought, but in 2008 especially, ever since, it's just been monotonous garbage. So that's been the video. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, sub. This is just a bonus video because watching Raw from 1999 really made me think about just how bland and boring everything in WWE today is. So hopefully you enjoyed. Be sure to like, comment, sub. You guys know the drill. See ya.